This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Howdy guys, it's Luke at Geekgaming Scenics, and in this video we're going to see whether shop bought is better than homemade on some certain things. I'll catch you after this. So guys, what I mean by this is when you're using things like texture paints, when you're using like your technical stuff like your rusts, your mosses, paints like that, if you're using little pots or even if you buy them bigger pots from loads of other companies, if you're doing terrain and bigger boards, it can be quite costly because you use it like it's going out of fashion. So when I'm doing things on boards that require them sort of textures, I've always just made them myself. However, there is a place to buy them and we'll discuss that in this video. So let's nip out, let's go get some to compare by, and we'll see you in a sec. So while we're off to the shop, let me tell you about this week's sponsor. So this week's sponsor is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning platform. The reason why I like Skillshare is it's not just some tutor that you don't know. You can find tutors on this platform that you like and look up to. One of my favourites is YouTube Success from Marcus Brownlee. It shows you how to edit, shoot and script with MKBHD. It's one of my favourite things to do because it's a guy that I watch on YouTube and look to. And you can do this with art, you can do this with photography. So if you're wanting to learn a bit of colour theory, or you're wanting to learn how to mix some colours in acrylics, any colour at all, why don't you try Jennifer Kelly's Colour Quest? This will literally teach you how to mix any colour with acrylics. If you don't believe me, the first 1,000 people to use my link below get 1 month free using Geekgaming Scenics at the checkout. And if you're not one of them lucky people to get the first 1,000 through, it's still a very cheap platform and there's a hell of a lot to be learned from it. And you don't have to be subscribed to it for 12 months, you can cancel at any time. It's an awesome learning platform for whatever you want to learn. And thanks Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now, back to the studio. So guys, the first one we're going to take a look at is your typical mud paint, which this can be sand, it can be Astogranite, it can be Mars, it can be whatever you want. I'm not usually one that uses this on my miniature bases because I just use my base readies. However, it does have its uses, especially if you're using, if you're on terrain, if you want to do like landslides or you want to do muddy roads, that's a good time to use it. And this is how we make it. So for your texture paints, whether this is going to be sand, dirt, whatever you want to do, just mix in the colour that you want, okay? I like to use wall filler as a medium rather than using acrylic mediums for this. One, it's cheaper, but two, it's quite flexible and it's quite durable, which is good on your terrain boards or your miniature bases. First of all, just get a good dollop of that and chuck it in a cup. Secondly, what I do then is I add some very fine sand. My favourite is black sand from my range or tropical beach from the base ready range, just because it's ultra fine. It's the finest sand I do and it's not too coarse. If you want it more coarse, you can make it with rougher, coarser sands if you wish, but I prefer using fine sands. That's the benefit of making things like this yourself. You can make it to whatever taste you have. Then after that, what we do is we mix some paint in to get it to the colour that we want. I'm going to be making mud paint with this, so I'm going to be using the cheapest brown craft paint I can find. However, the white of the acrylic wall filler will change the colour quite considerably, so if I have to, I will add a bit of black in to darken it down a bit, but it's just like mixing paint. If it's still too thick at this point, best thing to do is just add a little bit of water and a little bit of PVA glue just to help break it down, and then the PVA glue will help it stick to like your plastic bases and things like that. And once that's all mixed together, you get something that's quite easily spreadable and looks good on your miniature base. So that's a simple one out of the way. Now on to one of my favourites. This is making your own snow paste. Now, I use quite a lot of snow paste when I'm making my own dioramas or board builds because we have snow powder in my range, which is great for doing deep, thick snow coverings and good looking fresh snow. However, if you want to do like a melted ground or you want to do like a big icy pile of snow or even like blown frosting effects and things like that, it's nice to mix up your own. And this is how I make it. Now for this snow paste, this isn't as cheap and as easy as the original one. This one you're going to need some products. The first product I like to use is Gloss Medium Gel from Winsor & Newton or any art company. The cheaper you can find it, the better, but just a gloss medium. And the reason you want it glossy, so when it sets, you get that nice cold melted snow look. The second product that we put in that is snow powder from the Geekgaming Base Ready range. And then we also mix in a little bit of water to try and get it down to the consistency that we need. You don't need to put white ink in, but if you feel that you want to just colour it, you can do, but make sure you're using a white ink that's quite transparent and not too opaque, because otherwise you lose the transparency of the product. The benefit of making this snow pasty however you want is you can make it as thick or as thin, depending on what product you're making. For me, I'm making like a slushy snow, so I'll mix in quite a lot of snow powder to make it quite a dense paste. However, if you're wanting to do like a thin frosting effect or anything like that, you can put less of the snow powder in and a tiny drop of white ink, and then that'll give you a nice sort of snowy look for your basing. And if you want to see this used on something different, check out my Viking video where I did proper blown ice effects all over the front of the ship that look really nice. Link will be up above. So one that I'm going to mix up now is one that I really need at the moment for using on my board. However, I don't have a shop comparison for this because it's something I've always made myself because the amount I use is ridiculous. And this one is moss paint, okay? Moss paint is something that you just daub all over your buildings' roofs. You can daub it on your boards. You can daub it around all your water areas so you can have your moss and your algae. And because of how I use it, I've never actually bought a shop-bought product, and I really like the look of mine. So I'm going to show you how to make it, how I make it, but there will be no comparison for this one, unfortunately, but it looks great. So that's all you need to know. So to make this one, it is very, very simple. All you need to do is get some PVA glue. You need to get some mid-green blend from the Geekgaming Scenics range. You mix these together and add a little bit of water to get it to the consistency that you want, and then you literally just bathe it on the areas of the models that you wish to. Once that's actually gone off and dried, you can then go in there with some green pigment powders if you want and add a little bit more colours and textures to it, but sometimes it doesn't need it. It just depends on how it dries and how thickly you've put it on. One thing to watch out for is when you're mixing this up, it does look very, very bright and it looks very obnoxious when you're first putting it on. However, when this dries down, it desaturates and it just goes to a very much more natural colour once it's fully dried. So when I got into this hobby about 7 years ago, rust was one of them things that I used to do quite a bit. And the way I used to do it is how all of us do it, is with Typhus Corrosion from Games Workshop, and then Rise of Rust dry paint over the top. And I still use this today, especially when I'm doing my models, because when you're doing your models, a little pot like this goes a long way. However, when you're doing boards, or if you're doing like a derelict town or anything like that, these don't last 2 minutes. And I mix up an alternative. I don't think it's as good, and that's why I don't use it on my models, but it's close. And when you're doing it on terrain, it works very well and it looks very good. So I thought I'd show you, see what you think, and see whether, you know, it's something you'd use on your larger projects. So let's get to that. So how I make this one is I get a brown paint, around burnt umber in colour. And then what I do is I mix that down with PVA glue or matte medium, and I mix that down to a point where I can get it so it's quite translucent. Not like a wash in transparency, but just so you can sort of see things coming through it. Once it's at that stage, I start adding the black sand from my range into it. The reason I use the black sand is because it's dark, so it shows like little lumps of like iron or rust showing through. But the other reason I use it is because it's very fine and it doesn't bulk up and stick together very well in the mix. So you just can just paint it on, and as it dries, it shows little gravelly dots all over where you've put it. And it's that fine you can't hardly notice till you go on with the dry brush. Now, with this, I'm not going to show you how to make a dry brush paint. It's pointless. Any orange paint will do. And once that's dry, just dry brush your orange paint over the top, and you have a very convincing homemade rust recipe. So from all these comparisons, which is your favourite? Is it the mud version? Is it the snow version? Is it the moss paint, even though that's not a comparison? Or is it the rust at the end? Or will you use all of them? Let me know in the comments below, guys, because this is like adding a string to your bow. It's still good to buy shop-bought products because sometimes if you want that consistency over a long period of time, it's nice just to grab something you know that works. However, if you're working on quite a large project, it's just sometimes not cost-effective to do so, so you have to make them yourself. And sometimes a drop in quality or a drop in consistency is sometimes worth the cost. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. But anyway, guys, if you've liked this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And if you want to support me, don't forget to check out all my products that I've used in this video, and there'll be affiliated links and everything else below. And also, I'd like to thank Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use my code and everything below. It's a great company to work with, and I'm sure you'll learn something working with them too. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you again for the next video. Love.